Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who has taken his trauma and spoken truth to power. He's been meeting different conscious minded men in order to better themselves. He's creating a huge impact in the totality of consciousness with his truth. Everybody, welcome Kley Warren to the show.
Hey everybody, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming on my show. This is uh, something we've had in the works here for a little bit now, and I'm excited to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we first connected on Twitter maybe in May, maybe
Something
just
like
around
that.
Chris's podcast. And actually I think that the time has been super beneficial for me to understand maybe more of the messages that I'm going to share today, as far as maybe sharing them in a better way. I think I was very vivacious in May, and I think I would maybe might have shared messages a bit to not there's no wrong way, but just in a way where I feel like I have more command over some of the things that I want to share and the principles that go with them. And so I think that the timing is right. I think the alignment is found itself, in that way. So.
Yeah, I think that was a perfect way of wording it, having a better command over the principles. I struggled myself to find words to use, and I feel that's a really good one. I'm going to borrow that from you.
For sure, for sure. Take it all. It's all for all of us. You know what I
Uh,
mean?
hey, well, that's a great outlook on life. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kley Warren. I'm from North Ogden, Utah originally, which is where I'm at currently, and I am not based out of here. I'm just kind of spending a little bit of time here for the summer. I've been into holistic modalities for many years now. It kind of started out with conspiracy theories, or just changing my mindset around what reality was, what social parameters were, and why I was being told certain things that I was. And that led me into more of a spiritual path and into understanding the body and holistic modalities, and how we use our energy as beings, and becoming more of an energy scientist. And part of that was syncretism. And syncretism is something I'm continually cultivating and practicing. It's a lifelong challenge, and yeah, we'll continue to keep going on that path. I've recently gotten into, I have a couple different careers going, but one of the fun, exciting ones is I'm recently getting into digital art collection, blockchain with non-fungible tokens, and just kind of checking out what the digital space is about, sovereign marketing and art producing, and possibly creating some new economies that aren't so based upon the old conditions, and being able to create as your own creator rather than a part of the zeitgeist. So yeah.
Well, I love all of that. So you got into spirituality through conspiracy, you said.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised religious. I was raised Mormon in the the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let me give them their proper title. And yeah, that lasted, I mean, when I was 18, I started drinking, smoking weed, doing normal college age things that I had removed myself from doing in high school, and because of my religion. And I also was never keen on going on a 2-year mission, which I think is also something very kind of important about my story in a certain way. So I always had a religious, spiritual background in that sense. And so it was kind of like that, where when I left Mormonism, or just started following different paths, just realized it wasn't for me. I even went back and gave it another try too, and I can talk about that. But I always knew that I was a spiritual person. I always knew that I believed in the form of Mother Earth, in the form of God, and in their conjoining nature. I just didn't know what that looked like. and I just knew that kind of organized religion was less for me, or just some of the principles surrounding it. So when I started looking into conspiracies, what it really did is led me to the East, and led me to, Eastern philosophies, different ways of looking at religion, different ways of looking at spirituality, and kind of re-putting it back together. So even, it was good to have such a rigid framework of the LDS Church, because that allowed me then, when I started looking at other frameworks, to be able to see the good and the bad in them, and then kind of move myself towards that. So, and this place I'm at more spiritually now is more about being a sovereign, and living in the present moment, and experiencing rapture through that, but also, recognizing the duality between, our present fleeting existence abiding by time, versus our eternal non-existence, which is ever present, and kind of cultivating the two of those things.
Okay, that's very interesting. I haven't ever spoken to somebody from the Latter-day Saints. So, what separates them is that what is it? Okay, let me just ask you instead of trying to surmise myself. What is it exactly that separates them from other Christians?
Yeah, well, so, from my understanding, and again, I'm not a practicing Mormon, so, if I say something wrong, just understand it's been a while since I've been in those halls. But Joseph Smith, during the Religious Reformation, Joseph Smith had a vision from God, which I think is interesting timing if you put it together logically.
And what year was this? Do you know?
17, was it 17 or 18? 17 or 1800s.
Okay.
So, because this was before the pioneers, so a lot of the Mormons were pioneers who made it out west, a good portion of them. So it started in New York. Joseph had a vision. He started proselyting, and then a few years later, he founded a book. So what he did is he found a record of plates. That record that was a record. If Christ is the record of the European and the Persian empires, and that aspect, this is the North American lands. This is the record. The brass plates, the gold plates were a record of the North American lands, from what I understand. And so, like the Native American times. And so there's all these stories and then Joseph used some tools with a couple other guys to transcribe the books, and that's where the Book of Mormon comes from. So the main difference is that they have a separate book which they deem to be of God, and that provides further teachings in that. And the LDS Church specifically is a break off, where after Joseph Smith died, there was after he was executed, there's two churches broke off. One that went with Brigham Young, which is the LDS Church today, and then there's the FLDS, which kept that the prophet needed to be in Joseph's lineage. So there's even breakoffs within the Mormon Church as well. But the main difference being that they have another holy book called the Book of Mormon, and that they have a lot of other elements that spawn from.
Do they still observe the Bible?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, that's what I thought so. That's what, when I said other Christians, I knew they were Mormons, but so anyone listening, you guys can send in all your stuff telling me I was wrong, but that's fine. But they are essentially, Mormonism is just another branch of Christianity. It's like a larger
100%.
branch. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. And I actually was talking to my girlfriend about this like last week. I forget exactly what had us on this, but it was how we were talking about how religions get started in the name of somebody because God works through us, and people start worshiping the flesh and the blood that is having the God come out of them. And I was like, that's exactly what Mormonism is. He wasn't I don't know exactly what he was teaching, but I don't think he was teaching that worship me as God. It was more like, I got this message from God and I need to share it with people, and then that gets turned into false idol worship.
Well, and what we find with men, and we'll be talking about men too, right, is men create the world. And that's not there's no, whatever I say today, there's no slight towards women or anything. We're just talking about the way men are, from my understanding, right? And so men are out here creating the world. This is a man's world. That's because we're willing to die for it. We're willing to kill for it, right? We're willing to do anything to follow our directions, to follow our will, and to create the world in a sense. And we need that energy so that the feminine can hold, so that the feminine can provide the form, so that we have something to create for. Otherwise, it'd just be complete chaos. There would be, no peace. And so I think that when you are a person exemplifying Christ consciousness, like you say, exemplifying God from within, it's very attractive. It's very, you want to worship that person, right? Because you recognize God within them, and you see it within yourself, and all of those things. So I think that if you are able to make yourself a channel for that kind of consciousness, if you're able to put yourself in that framework, you, like you said, you can be really attractive and pull people in. Now, in the early days of Mormonism, there were a lot of people that were pulled in, but there was a lot of persecution as well, and it was a lot of different struggles, and that's why they moved west, is because they kept getting kicked out of places, because the ideology kept getting pushed on other people, but they started, it was very tribalistic back then, is very much defending your resources because they were absolutely necessary, otherwise you would die. And so a lot of people had to kind of fend for themselves. So the Mormons, when they would come in and kind of take resources as just another group, they would be persecuted against.
Do you know why they were why their beliefs weren't necessarily adopted, or like what the issue was between this newfound spirituality called Mormonism and what was being celebrated as Christianity? Do you know what the separation was?
I think that there was a lot of specified ideas around Mormonism, which there's still a lot today, and a lot of it predicated on choice. And there's a lot of judgment in the culture. There's a plethora of wonderful Mormons who don't judge people, but within, especially in Utah, within the culture, there's a heavy judgment, just aura going on. So I think that maybe there were specific things where they'd come in and say, well, we live this way, and you're not living God's law, so you're sinning. And then if I was already there on that land, and then you told me and came and told me that I was sinning, I'd be like, well, get the hell out of here. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want that in that sense or whatever. So, and I can give you kind of my 2 cents on when I look at it. I don't know if you've heard about dinosaurs not being real. Have you heard that theory?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on board in that dinosaurs didn't exist in the capacity that they tell us that they did.
And have you heard the origin stories of part of why that might be?
Yeah, so
With the
I
two
know,
guys
yeah, the
who,
two guys who were beefing with each other. Yeah.
right, yeah. So there was 2 people, right? They were talking about dinosaurs, and building it up, and kind of going back and forth, and then all of a sudden one of those guys found a dinosaur bones, and then the other guy found dinosaur bones, and then there you go, right? So there's kind of a bit of fraudulent activity. So when I think back to when the Mormon Church started, I think about what was going on at the time, and it's willingly admitted that the religious Reformation. Everybody came over here for religious freedom, and now they have freedom, and now they get to do it, right? And so I think this is early 1800s, mid 1800s, because I think it's after America's established, I believe. And yeah, 1800s for sure. And so what does Joseph Smith see is a poor farm boy on a farm, and probably in his town what he's seeing is pastors walking around with money, with nice clothing, speaking about God. And so for him, maybe he is inspired by God, sure, but maybe he's also inspired by himself to, become a pastor, create his own church. Like, it's just like with what's happening now with the digital art. It's like lots of people are getting into digital art. Lots of people are into cryptos. I'm trying it out. Why? I'm trying out this internet thing. I'm trying out this thing. This is what we do as humans and culture and society. So if the religious reformation was going on and he creates his own church during a religious reformation, kind of makes a lot of sense, right? And then what we find is, yes, he was a schoolboy or a farm boy, excuse me, but he was also he knew how to read and write, and he might have known how to do that maybe better than some people think. And when you look at the Book of Mormon and the Bible, they're pretty much written the same way, just different stories, different names, a little bit different ideas, right? And so it's not inconceivable for me as a writer to think that getting together with a couple other writers, you could come up with a really amazing book, copying another book in a certain sense. And there you go. And then that kind of sets you apart too. So it's almost like if you look at the Mormon Church as a business, like how you would look at Dinosaurs, right? It's like you start to see, you start to see things that kind of show points of difference. And this is again my own opinion on it, but it's also just like I have dealt with and have looked at men and how the men operate, and I know the lengths and the level what men are willing to go to fulfill their missions and their desires. And so if you got wrapped up in this, you were having success, then you wanted to add another layer and another layer and another layer, it just kind of starts, the rabbit hole keeps going. And then before you know, like, what's the difference between a cult and the government is that in a cult, there's one person at the top who knows it's all bullshit. In a government, there's nobody who knows it's all bullshit, right? Because there's nobody at the top. So if you got people in and they all started believing in your message and started exemplifying Christ consciousness themselves and feeling good in God and doing good things, but having this undertone of something else, then all of a sudden, you'd be wrapped up in it too, as Joseph, be wrapped up in it and be like, well, all these people now are depending on me. There's, 300 people now who, 2,000, I got to keep going. Right. And that would feed your ego and keep you, perpetually maybe creating this deceit, if that's, however it all kind of spawned out. But it's very hard for me to believe that a religion that's predicated so much on choice is the absolute authority in our world. So that's why I don't believe it is, amongst other things. So.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. You make a very clear and concise point that it could all be set up as a business and as those types of things. But I also, as someone who I've never learned Mormonism at all. The Book of Mormon, I'm actually interested. I should probably read into it at least to get familiar with it. But as you're telling me, it could be that just what this person was given was information that he perceived in a slightly different way. I'll say for me, I channel a lot of information. I get a lot of information received from God, from Source, from the heavenly realms. I don't particularly ask for names, but I've been through quite a lot that I know that it's coming from a good place. And what it usually does for me is it ties together several different disciplines, several different cultures. They all share certain things. Excuse me. They all share certain things, and then it'll take, for instance, a Christian saying that if you don't observe Christ when you die, you're going to go to hell. But if you do observe Christ when you live, you're going to go to heaven. So I got last week, like, that's a true statement, but not for when you die. It's for when you're alive. If you're not observing that there's something greater than you when you're alive, you're going to find out that you're living in hell because you have no control. But if you do observe that, then you're living in heaven because you understand you have no control, and it's freeing when you do that. So, I can see how Christianity turned around, and maybe it wasn't done on purpose. Maybe it was just misinterpreted, or, I like to think that somebody probably changed it from, while you're living to when you die. That one little phrase changes it a lot. but it's something like that where I get information that's very similar to agnostic Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, and it kind of ties them all together. And like sometimes I'll get something channeled like that the Arcturians are the archangels and the Anunnaki are the fallen angels, and it's just something that ties together things that are so weird, but uh, they already exist on their own. But the only way I can channel information is if I have the capacity, and I only have the capacity when I start to learn about different topics. So, I have to learn the existing information in order to find out what the correct information is. So, while I totally agree with what you were saying about Mormonism, I can also see the complete and opposite side in that it could be all completely true, and at some point it got hijacked and altered just like everything else does, but it could have started out as something
Sure.
at least yeah, something pure, at least on the vision, and then maybe he got with the wrong people and they started guiding him towards something. Maybe he was a really spiritual guy, because you have to have some kind of ability in order to have command of a crowd the way that a Joel Osteen does, or in that case with Joseph Smith. You have to have something about you that is an original, unique spark to get that excitement going by everybody else.
Yeah, that Christ element for sure, and like you said, co-opted, compacted. I mean, and all we have to do is really look at things in our modern day and how they work, right? Something's hot, something's original, something's really cool. Then all of a sudden, somebody kind of buys it, and it gets tweaked a little bit, or something happens, and you notice the shift, and all of a sudden, it's like it's not as fun and cool and engaging anymore, and it becomes more of. But now it's like very, very popular in that way, and so that's if you look at the Mormon Church in that way, a lot of the rituals inside the temple are repackaged Masonic rituals. So like obviously at some point down the line it got co-opted, just like the Bible at some point down the lines got co-opted. I mean, everything, so much of what we're dealing with now is just full deception. And a lot of that, a lot of people said, oh, we're leaving the age of Pisces and we're going to the age of Aquarius. And in tropical astrology, that is true. And in tropical is much more of the physical, the societal, because that's what we abide by. But in the sky, in the actual literal sky, we're still deep in Pisces, the deceptor. And we've only just started the Aquarian. So, the deception is going to be, rampant, especially in the spiritual front, because if the physical front, the societal front of it has moved into the Aquarian and is moving into the expansion of the mind and opening up to truths, right? Then it means that the spiritual, which I believe to be the visible sky, the connection to the more source, right? Less societal, would be in full deception. So we will, possibly be seeing some type of antichrist figure, some type of these spiritual full deceptions if we're in the middle of the Piscean age when it comes to the literal sky. So I can see how, maybe Joseph was just this pure and hearted guy in that sense, and things get co-opted or changed. And there's a lot of like, because a lot of the male bullshit that I've been understanding from the church, or that I experienced as well in the church, because there's a dualistic side to what happened with me specifically, which doesn't happen to a lot of church members, but I know that it's in the church with satanic ritual abuse, which is a part of my story as well, growing up with that and that kind of underbelly network that is inside of the church. If I lived back in Joseph's time and I felt like you should go on a mission, and I'm the one who's telling you should go to England for a year and a half, well, who's going to take care of your wife? Well, don't worry, I'll take care of your wife. You know what I mean? And a year and a half, 2 years, you're going overseas. She doesn't know if you're going to see him again. What's going on there? You know what I mean? What are the men doing while the other men are gone? And for me, what that means is, oh, you saw a good man would serve the Lord, and he will leave his family to serve the Lord, which he does, right? Because he believes in it, because he's going to go build the world for God. But on the back end, his family might be traumatized, raped, could be even, they disown you because, or whatever, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that that's exactly how it all went down, but if we really think about those times in the past, that they're only one step away from something, catastrophic in that sense as well. So for me, it's like the pure intent of ourselves is always there, and of someone like Joseph Smith is there, but recognizing the logical fallacies, and also the place and time that we're in. This is not even the 1800s. This is not the heaven on earth that people are trying to make it to be, which, you can live in heaven on earth all you want or whatever, but as that, like you say, with waking people up about the mission of the podcast is just sharing the ideas and bridging the gap. It's like, we've been in this lower side of the sign. We've been on this unconscious state, and so knowing the game you're in is helpful, I believe. So
Yeah, you said a lot in.
sorry.
No. I am intrigued by all of it, and I want to make sure I get to all of it.
Oh my God.
Because every new sentence I was like, oh well, you're blowing my mind with some of the things that you're saying. But so I just want to take it, try to go through it step by step a little.
It's all still there, so we can work our way around however we get there.
So the first thing you said was that we're still in the Pisces or Piscean age. Is that how you say
Pisces, yeah, the age of Pisces, yeah.
Yeah. So you're the first person that I've heard say that we are in that age of deception still, and that it's not Aquarius. So can you explain the difference a little bit? I'm not familiar, I barely know anything about astrology. I know it's real and I know that it can be worked, but it's not something that I've delved into deeply. So can you explain that, why does everyone else think that we're in the age of Aquarius?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I think about when I think about with energy is that you are not just one thing. You're not just a man, you have divine feminine. You're not just this, you have that, you're so multifaceted. Same with me, all that kind of stuff. So in astrology, I find all forms of astrology relevant because I think that they have relevance. So there's this concept called the egregore, and the egregore is the idea that we all are collectively creating this reality by what we believe, right? If we all believe it, it will be that becomes real. And so tropical astrology is based upon the Aries, the spring equinox, right? And that starts and each sign gets 30 degrees in the sky per sign. And then it's 12 signs, right? And so you have perfectly fixed rotation through that. But when that was developed, that is where the sun was at during, I believe, Marcus Aurelius, and the Romans created this calendar. But I can't remember if it was them who were adopting this astrology. I'll have to look that up. But yes, also like you, astrology it's a big science. It's a lifelong learning thing. I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not the greatest astrologer, but I know great astrologers, and I listen to them, and I'm, trying my best. So anyway, so that's tropical. And so in sidereal, which is the actual visible sky, right? Instead of it being based upon these 30-degree fixed positions, now what we do is we take each constellation for its actual degrees in the sky. So some are 40, some are 15, some are, so the transits change. So how long the sun stays in the actual sign changes, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so since it's precession, which syncretism is based upon it's based upon the Prisca which is the Prisca Thealegia. I can't say it how Santos says it, but the religion of precession, the religion of the stars. right? And so I look at the actual stars, the visible sky. So in the visible sky, there are 13 constellations for sidereal, which is where you get that Fucus. But Fucus is really just still 12 because it's a star that's in Scorpio, and it's a hidden part of the hidden sign, right? Scorpio is a hidden sign, so it's the more spiritual, deeper parts of the hidden sign, and it's still the 12, so it's still the same sky. It's just now compartmentalized. So when you do that, right, it changes the size of Pisces, it changes the size of Aquarius, right? So as we're determining the age, by looking at where, at the horizon position, you're actually visibly, when we go out and you visibly look at the sky and you see where we are in the age, you'll see Pisces, right? But in the tropical calendar in 2012, which what the Mayans were documenting based upon the tropical era or whatever, right, is we moved into the age of Aquarius, because the age, the determinants of the age was shifted into that position based upon those charts. But like I said, when you go out to the visible sky, it's in Pisces. So with that, for me, both are true, right? Both are true. The visible sky, the spiritual, the truth connection to source is always there. So that's Pisces, right? But we do live in this society, and this society does accept the tropical system. And I do believe the egregore to be true, right? So because all of society accepts that this system is true, then even though it's not playing out in the sky directly as we see it, it is true, and it is affecting us, and it is a cipher that we all are abiding by, right? And so it's both in that sense. And so that's kind of my explanation with that.
So, do you have an approximate of how long until the age of Aquarius is in the actual visible sky?
It could be a couple hundred years.
A couple hundred.
So yeah, something like that. I'd have to relook that up, but last that I saw, that I think we are a few hundred years out from that.
Okay.
And yeah, I wish I would have actually brushed up on that before we talked. But if somebody wants clarification and they send you an email or a comment or something, you let me know, and I'll find more direct, clear information so that I can show that processional timing
Okay.
on that, because it's it's a science. You could figure it out.
Yeah, I didn't know what the two different disciplines were called, as you just described it all. But as you're describing the first one, I'm like, I thought there were 13, and I thought that they were all aligned according to how big the sign is. But I did know that there was another form, so I did know. I just didn't necessarily know that they were called what you're calling them.
Yeah, so that's called Vedic or sidereal, which is the
Okay.
true visible sky, and then there's tropical or Western, which is the 30 degrees per, which is our kind of the standard. When you get a reading, generally, that's what it will be in. Yeah.
So a Fucus, you said, is a part of Scorpio, so that makes Scorpio much larger than previously thought as well.
Well, so Scorpio's a pretty big sign already, and when you look at Scorpio like this, a Fucus is just on the side here, so it's contained within it. It's just its own single star. I've looked at it quite a bit in the sky or whatever, so it's just a hidden part of it. But the path of all of the planets kind of go right near a Fucus, so it'll be in Scorpio, but it will be in a Fucus, if that makes sense, and then it'll pop out of a Fucus.
So Scorpio is behind a Fucus, so that it can hit both at once, kind of.
Kind of, exactly, yeah. Scorpio's hiding another energy within it because it's a hider, right? And this energy is more specific to the dead, to those who have gone to the spirit realms, which Scorpio already is. But this is like this is the part where we let everybody see it, but or we don't let anybody see anything but our family, and then we don't let our kids even see that part. Only our wife gets to see the Fucus, if that makes sense, right? It's the real deep parts that you keep hidden, or that are really close to your heart or your spirit, or those kinds of things, often associated with the dead as well in many ways. As far as they've passed on, they can see these kinds of things.
Okay, so and is that on the side that Scorpio is touching Sagittarius, or is that on the side where it's touching, where Fucus meets?
A Fucus is a bit lower in its tail, in kind of the tail area. I'd have to look at it, but I think it is closer to the Sagittarius and not to Libra.
Okay, this is really putting some things together for me right now as I'm asking you this.
If I can plug a YouTube channel, he's got Mastering the Zodiac. On YouTube, he's got great resources. Good. He does sidereal uploads every week, and he's got video, like good, just informational videos on these kinds of things as well. So Mastering the Zodiac.
Do you think that a Fucus could have been, as you said, it was hidden? Do you think it could have been that the Mayans were correct in using their 12 because that's all their visible sky was, and now the 13th, a Fucus has emerged, and that's actually the Christ light. And I only say that's star. I say that because in the Vedic text, I'm blanking, the Bhagavad Gita. In that, Krishna says, "If I am the months, I am November and December," and I was like, "Oh, Sagittarius. I'm Sagittarius. It stretches." And I'm dead center Sagittarius. I'm 2 weeks in, and then 2 weeks out it's over, like dead center. But this is blowing my mind even more, because if you're saying that would extend Scorpio from maybe to early December, so that Ophiuchus would actually be November, December.
Exactly. And Scorpio would not be removed in this equation as well, right? So what you find when you look at sidereal, so when you map your chart, I'm a Taurus, right? But in the visible sky in sidereal, I'm an Aries. There's a bit of a lag, if you will, right? In because of the precession, because the way that it's lined up where we're at right now. And so you could be an Ophiuchus sun, because they do say Ophiuchus is like the wounded healer, right? Just like Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is the sage, burning the sage, burnt offerings. The reason we did burnt offerings wasn't just to appease the gods, but it was to remember death. And Sagittarius is welcoming in Capricorn. He's burning before the death, right? The death of the sun. And so I am a Sagittarius rising. In sidereal, I am an Ophiuchus rising, right? And so you are with a podcast about healing. It's not out of the realm of possibility that you could be Ophiuchus in sidereal sun. But even if you're a Scorpio sun, Scorpios are also known to be great healers, really depthful healers. I mean, the reason the Scorpio is such a backbiter, right, is because it loves so much that it gets hurt the most, because they will love you the deepest, right? So it's going to hurt you the most. The same kind of thing with the healing. They just have a natural proclivity to bring out that spiritual feeling and healing, right? So definitely, I mean, and Mastering the Zodiac, his readings are reasonably priced. He also does like video chats, but he also can just like map your chart for like $10 as well too.
Wow.
And you don't get any like written stuff with it, but you can see it,
That's awesome.
So yeah, definitely look into that, because you might be, but it's not even necessarily like an extension into March. It's something like when we start to think of the calendar as something malleable, we start to understand things different. Because if we take, what's the expression, a year and a day? Well, a year used to be 13 months because it was the lunar year, right? Just like the Chinese astrology, it's 28 days, the menstrual cycle, right? The moon cycle, 13 times 28, 364 plus 1, a year and a day, right? So you can see how, like, if we are living in a man's world, then most likely men created this calendar, right? Because it's opposite, or it's skewed, perverted.
It's overriding.
of the feminine calendar, the 13 months. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is all, and so again,
That's
that
in the Book of
deception,
Enoch.
yeah, this deception, right, that we're in is about skewing our time, our space, our energy, our understanding, right? So of course, I'm not saying wrong or right. I don't. These are concepts I'd love to explore in conversation over hours and hours, which I do, from time to time, but I haven't really had this kind of back and forth. But yeah, when you start to think of the calendar as malleable, you start to realize that there are a lot of control measures, that it's not just social media. It's actually literally your calendar might be something that's energetically holding you into a masculine world, into a patriarchy, if you will, right? That's more the patriarchy than like the man holding me down. Is like, to me, it's like we literally live in these worlds that are skewed. People think we live on a sphere that's spinning in space. Like, that's patriarchy to me, in a sense. That's falsehood. Not patriarchy, excuse me. That's the societal version of patriarchy that's been espoused as something negative. Let me put it that way, because I believe that a true patriarch is like Christ.
Okay. I did want to say. No. You're great. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. But it's my girlfriend she's, I think, the second to last day of Scorpio is her birthday. So, her and I together, as soon as we met, I don't know if you've listened to that part yet, but her and I met, and 3 weeks later, I moved 750 miles to be with her because I knew her and I were the same being, that there's a puppeteer controlling both of us, and it's telling the puppeteer is moving me here. So 3 weeks later, I moved 750 miles away, and the more that we're together, the more we understand each other and we heal each other. And everything you were just saying about the Scorpio is, I know she doesn't want to be too out there, but that was her thing, is, loving so much and being so hurt by it. And together, I don't want to take credit for her healing, but, together we're healing, and she's healing me in the sense that I need. But exactly as you were saying, that's the way that I've been helping her heal. And, a Fucus we could, I guess, essentially both be a Fucus. Or like,
Yeah,
right
or
there
have,
anyway.
or yeah, right there. You have merging energies. Just like I'm a Taurus, right? So I get Scorpio a lot because we're opposites. If that makes sense. There's a draw, there's a pull, but I have a lot of Aries, and I would also say that, like, again, like, I'm these numbers that I am, and I'm also these other numbers that I am, and I'm in Taurus in Western, but I'm an Aries in sidereal. So guess what? I'm both. And you can just deal with it if you don't like it, because that's what a Taurus and an Aries would tell you, right? Is this, deal with it. So it's kind of like that, where we, work with the energies you got and merge them, and those kinds of things, and definitely look into that, because like you say, you're right there. Yeah. And it's not just your sun, it's also these other elements too, and seeing what other things you have, and what courage it takes for someone to pursue someone like that, and just to understand, to surrender to the fact that you're feeling like, these choices aren't even mine to make, in a sense. I've already made them. She's already made them. And how much you guys both had to surrender while coming together, like a lot of sacrifice, a lot of change, a lot of upheaval, quickly too, right? But what's that do? Like you said, it's created this space where now you're starting to grow up in healing each other, and growing with each other, growing upwards in that healing. And soon you'll probably get to a place where we're just existing. We're not even healing anymore, in a certain sense, because we live a healed life, and we suffer, and we live in joy and bliss too, and we're getting it all, and we've removed a lot of this old stuff, and there it is. And so I think being cognizant of that is huge.
Well, I'm glad that you're just got into that, because I think that we just, not just, but that we hit a new level of what you're talking about this past weekend. We went to the Georgia Guidestones. It's our 1 year anniversary of meeting, but it was another, 3 weeks until we were together, but it was still our 1 year anniversary meeting, and it was the most magical weekend. I mean, it was so awesome. We got to be at the Georgia Guidestones at sunset on Friday the 2nd, and we were the only two people in the world there. And then on the 4th of July at sunrise, we were the only two people in the world there. And we meditated, and well, I was meditating, and she was documenting the whole thing. And it was just, it was so beautiful. And it was, there's been a very large shift in the two of us, and we're genuinely nice people and happy, but it's hit another level. Like the joy and excitement and love and laughter has hit this all-time high for us, and it's just, it's like a rocket ship taking off right now, I feel.
Yeah, and I think documentation, I mean, creativity, right? I assume she was videoing and taking pictures.
Yeah.
That's a form of meditation too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think there's so many things that we don't realize that are meditation. I think of construction work, for, as there's a meditative rhythm in there. There's, I think about these kinds of things that I've done with as physical labor, even cooking, right? There's some meditation in it. And so it's a beautiful because your consciousness can change what it's doing, but you can still remain tapped into that space. And just coincidentally enough, last year when you met on 4th of July or just before it, right, there was the Saturn Jupiter moon conjunction, full moon on last year on 4th of July. I remember that specifically because I was dating a Scorpio, a very powerful Scorpio, and I hope she listens to this. Very proud of her for what she's doing and her continued efforts to help people and to continue to see the world new. She's an awesome person. And anyway, we were dating at that time and had a really powerful experience on the 4th of July as well. A night that I will be hard pressed to forget. I never like saying like I'll never forget. That's not really my thing. But man, this was one of those nights that it will stay with me for a long, long time. And the emotions and feelings and things that were shared, and just I can just see it all in my mind still very well. And like you say, it was like almost like entering one kind of portal. And I do feel like it has completed. So maybe it completed last weekend, even if you just want to go on a year base. But it's about these kinds of things where recognizing the specialness of the moment. It's just one day. It's just 1 hour. It's just one astrological conjunction. It's just one numerological synchronicity. It's just one whatever. But recognizing the power and respecting and being grateful for it, then guess what? It starts to show up in other places in your life. You start to see it as, oh, it wasn't just one, it was all, right? And it's everything, but yet it was just still that one. And that's where our perspective can really start to expand, because we appreciate the present moment. We appreciate this aspect of going to the Guidestones, having this experience, right? And we reckon, but we let that be what it is. And then it starts to show up more in our life energetically and positively and these kinds of things. So very much resonate with that. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I didn't know. I mean, I was kind of following a little bit of astrology, when there's something big, it's all over social media. Everyone's always talking about conjunctions, but I don't remember that about the last 4th of July. I mean, I guess my mind was elsewhere because I was down here for the first
I'll say
time.
pursuing the love of your life,
Well, yeah, well, at
that's
the
a big
time,
deal.
well, at the time we met as friends, and I only came down here because the lockdowns were in place, and I came to Georgia because they were the only place that was open. So and I knew her from Twitter, and I was like, hey, can I come down? And then my hotel canceled on me, so then I stayed the weekend with her. Or not canceled on me. They lost my reservation or whatever. So I stayed the weekend with her, and then the 4th of July was the day that I was like, I could do this. This could be, I could live here.
Well, and I don't know if it's not the same as the so the December conjunction. What happened is they moved into Aquarius from Capricorn, but there was some kind of alignment in the sky. I can't remember the exact thing off the top of my head now, but I
Okay.
remember we were in this canyon and you could see the moon, and then you could see Jupiter and you could see Saturn, and it was
Oh
like
wow.
really cool. So I just think it's awesome that you had that experience, and you know, again, what synchronicity, what a little serendipity as far as you know, the hotel even counseling. I'm sure there was many more things that kind of all brought that together. But so when you said you saw a bunch of weird numbers this weekend,
Oh yeah. Okay.
while you're at the
So,
Guidestones, so yeah.
all right. So when I'm at the Guidestones, I stay. I, now, mind you, I realized before going there that I was going to a town of Freemasons. That I
Yeah.
knew there was going to be a bunch of stuff going down, not
Hmm.
necessarily going down, but that there was going to be things to find, things to look for. So the first thing is we get to our hotel and we have to go to the bathroom so bad. It's like a 4-hour trip. And well, firstly, on the way there, there was such energy that I felt so fucking high. I was like, I gotta pull over, but there was nowhere to pull over because we're going up and down these mountainsides, and I'm just like, the energy is just rushing to me, and I'm like I'm barely holding on, and I wasn't all that high, so it was like the energy was just shooting through me when I got into 100 miles. All right, so then we get to, which I don't know at the time, but we're 33 miles, exactly 33 miles away from the hotel.
Well,
And I just get hit with this load of energy, and all of a sudden, so I can see when, if I'm talking to you and you're envisioning something in your mind, I can see that. So I have a very powerful third eye, and right when I hit the 33 miles, I got some woman opened her eyes and said, "He's almost here." And it was like, whoa, that was weird because it was like a tingle down the back of my neck, and it was just like there was a lot to it. So then we get to the hotel, and nobody's in the lobby, so we each have to go to the lobby bathroom and black and white checker floors. Uh, and I'm like, okay, well, I kind of expected this, but then I'm realizing what street routes are. Okay, so we have the Guidestones and the hotel are both on Route 77. All right. And the cross street, there's a cross street that on one side, on the, what was that? On the east side, no, I'm sorry, the west side, it's College Ave. And to the east side is Oliver Street. So for no reason at all, the name just changes. It splits right there. And if you look at it on a map, it's a cross from the hotel to the Guidestones is a cross. And those two streets are that are Oliver Street and College Avenue, they are Route 17 slash Route 72, meaning, they're both Route 17 and 72 right there. So there's a lot of weird numbers all of a sudden. Okay, Route 17, Route 77, Route 72. Okay, let me take you a little more weird. We get to the Guidestones. The Guidestones are on Route 77 at mile marker 17. And there's not every 0.1 miles like I'm from Philly, and the mile markers up there it's every 0.1. No, we're in the boonies where it's every mile. But if I was a betting man, I would say that the Guidestones street is on mile marker 17.72. Uh, you know, just if someone ever wants to go measure that, I don't know exactly how you would measure it, but I'm pretty sure that it would be 17.72 because it was more than half a mile from mile marker 17. And I'm a truck driver for 10 years, so I have a pretty good feel for how far something is. And I just have the slight feeling that it would be 17.72, but it gets a little more weird so that if when you're going back from the Guidestones, in order to get downtown to Oliver Street, because Oliver Street is the downtown area, you can make this little cutout before you get to the cross intersection. Before you get there, there's a little cutout called Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And if you've ever seen a Methodist church, you know how they have that red flag on the one side, that the little red line that goes connects. That's exactly what Martin Luther King Boulevard does. And my girlfriend, the entire time we're there, keeps saying to me, she goes, "Look how many crosses there are. Every single house has a big old cross on their lawn, and I mean very big." And the energy there was extremely positive. There's no negativity there at all. So all the conspiracy theories and all, I mean, as soon as I got close to this place, I could tell what that the Freemasons are doing something there to raise the frequency level there. There is something going on. There's nothing negative going on there. And I'm a very good energy reader, and I got no negativity until one part. But but I wanted to talk to you about those numbers of, you know, Route 17, Route 77, Route 72, making the cross right there. Maybe the cross doesn't anything to do with numbers, but those numbers in numerology are all kind of significant, are they not?
I mean, they have certain elements. I mean, 7. Well, so yeah, let's how do I want to, so many things I want to say. Well, first of all, let's just give acknowledgement. They certainly do love their grids and their style. When you start to view the world as a circuit, as a grid, you and our country as a grid, you start to look at things a little differently, and you start to realize, well, why like when you look inside of a computer and you look at the different chips and the different things, they're situated to perform in certain ways, right? And so our grid map, the ley lines, the city roads and stuff in some cities, it's very just generically planned, whatever. But places like DC, which is a Mason city for sure, New York, Philly, Georgia, I mean, there's, you start to look into these things and you start to see, oh, they really do love the grids, because the grid is what's creating power, the power energy, right? And, the idea that if the grid, like you say, if the grid's positioned, created a certain way, it creates a certain type of energy, depending on where you're at or whatever it is. So acknowledgement to them, and just to you, to you start to see how obvious it is once you start to know the science. So fire and earth was maybe a big part of the energy that you were experiencing, because if there's a lot of crosses, what the cross is the fire of God, the male, the phallic, the one, right, and the horizon of the earth together. And this is, Christ dying on the cross, the Christ flame with his mortal body being sacrificed upon the cross, right, on your spine, the kundalini fire going up your physical spine, the cross, right?
Isn't that what the Methodist red part is? Isn't that the flame of Christ?
I'm not familiar with them as much, but if that's what you believe it, I'll go with that. And sure, I mean, I don't know. Wait, somebody could correct us, but let's go with it. Why not, right? So
yeah.
So there's another connection. One of my favorites, and so you have the grid makers, which would be the Masons, if you will, or whoever's really behind all of this type of thing. And then you have the universe herself who's speaking through those numbers, right? And so one of my favorite things is when she does it through time. I guess that would actually be more Satan, more Kronos, when he speaks through time, I guess. But Mother Earth has a certain way of speaking as well too. Because what I view these elements as, I view the planets and stars as their own biological beings, and they have relationship with us, and so we're just cultivating. So they speak through these kinds of ways, and Jupiter would be Zeus, would be Jupiter, Jesus, and Satan, Saturn, would be Father Time, Kronos, right? All these kinds of things. So when we get to the numbers, what we start to see is 7 used to be the perfect number. 7 is the angelic number. 7 is the spiritual sexual. In my opinion, and this is my own shit, it's the energy that allows a consciousness to come into the body. If the 5 sexual is about creating the physical vessel, right? If that's that kind of fertility sexual, the energy, fresh new energy that it takes to create a new child, the 7 would be about bringing the consciousness into that child, right? And that type of sexual, right? So you have 1 sexual, which is creating the physical being, and then you have the spiritual creation, because sex is just creation, right? And then spiritual creation, 7. So it would make sense that you're feeling good energy, spiritually connected, feeling also like a clearer channel, because that 7 is coming in. Double 7 can be a 5 as well. So a lot of creative energy, a lot of expressive energy. It also multiplied can be a 4. And so you have, you kind of have a little bit of, which makes sense with the 72 and the 8 in that sense, because you have a 9 in there as well. And I'm going really off base, so I know a lot of people won't be able to keep track of where I'm at in my mind with these numbers. But just to say, so let's simplify it back. So we have 77, we have 17, and we have 72, right? And it is amazing too, when you've done a profession for a long time, how you know where you're at with what you're doing with the profession. So when you say 17.2 mile marker, I believe you, right? And because your internal clock is telling you where you're at on the mile.
Well, 17.72. So I think it's,
0.72. You think
yeah,
it's
I think
even that precise?
yeah, well, see, at first I'm thinking like, oh, that's probably 17.7, but then as I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, wait, it's Route 17 and Route 72 that crosses 77. So it'd be like, oh, it's not just at 17.7, it's at 17.72.
And there's a lot here, and what we have is 7, 8, and 9. 17 being 8, 72 being 9, and we have the running throughout them 7, right? We also have the 1 and the 2, and so we have some very interesting kind of combination energies where we have the end 7, 8, and 9, but we also have, father, mother, 1 and 2. Right. So we have the worldly trinity, which would be the spirit, the duality of money, power, karma, and then the actual world 9, the fib, conjoined with great father, great mother, if you will, beginning energy, right? And in the cycle of numbers here. So there's some kind of combination going on in the way that they've orchestrated that between routes. Because you can make a route almost anything, like name it this thing, type of thing. So there's some kind of like combination there. And then also you were there on
the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Right. And so which day did you actually go to the Guidestones?
The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, all 3.
Oh, all 3 days. Okay.
And I can even throw one more number at you because I forgot this one. The hotel room we stayed in, and there was other person stayed the second night, and the first night there was like 3 or 4 other cars in the parking lot. But the room they put us in was room number 306. So, and we stayed on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So we hit every number except for number 5 in
But you're in a 5-year.
Well, there's the number 5.
There's the 5. Yeah, and
like
I actually, while you were
trip.
saying that, and you completed a cycle with your love, right? And now you feel like you've moved into something new, right? So very much a completion cycle, a change in way you see things. And again, these are all personal experiences to you, right? And working with your energy and the way you run and these kinds of things. And I think people need to really understand that. It's like, oh, my light code, my 333, it's like, okay, like, yes, you can price your shit in 555s and all these kinds of things, which I like. I don't necessarily need to get into, but remember that 333, when you see it, is something specific for you too. There is generic, but more often than not, when the universe takes time to talk to you and to show you, it is 100% about you and your pattern, because what I think is it's you talking to you, right?
Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No.
I have a 333 attached to the story. So I was putting out that I was going to do a mass meditation on 7/3 at 3:33 at the Guidestones, and I even messaged several different psychics and powerful meditators, and I asked them all to send me their intention and energy. I'm a reflector on the human chart, or so I always call it the human chart, the human design. I'm a reflector, so I was going to intend to reflect their energy from me to heaven, being in that completion cycle, being in that high place, high point on earth, that I was going to reflect it. And what ends up happening is that day, there are two M-class solar flares, a C-class solar flare, and an X-class solar flare, all released. None of them hit the Earth. They're way in front of the Earth, but that's pretty significant flares. 5 of them, actually. So there's another number 5, and I couldn't do the meditation at 3:33 because 24 plus bikers showed up at 3:25, or it was like 3:20, 3:25, loud as could be. It was. So what do you think the universe was telling me with that I went around, telling people, putting it all over the place, hey, 7/3, 3:33 meditation, and then the only time I felt any negative energy, which was from these bikers when they showed up, at the time that I announced to the world that I was going to do this meditation.
Well, 2 things. I think 3 things, but two things in the first thing, which would be, one, it's either telling you, hey, you're making too big of a deal out of this, right? If you want to meditate, man, just meditate. You know what I mean? Or 2, it was telling you, hey, here's some bullshit energy. You're gonna still do what you said you were gonna do in face of this bullshit energy, right? And so it's either however you want to take it, right? In that sense, it could be like, hey, face the adversity and go through it, or it could just also just be like, hey, you're planning it too hard, you're being too much of a try hard right here, and you just need to flow, type of thing, or whatever, because sometimes she does that as well. And I think with the numbers and looking at it, 7, 3, 10, 15, 6, yeah. So yeah, it's probably just the reality of maybe also too that trip, again, that trip is designed for you.
Mm-hmm.
This trip was designed for you. So that's why I say I don't knock people for 1111 or 333 or these kinds of things. There's no knock in any way. It's just kind of also just to say, like as I started becoming more proclivitous with this, I started seeing more of my own stuff. I started seeing more specific stuff. Like I've told, there was points and times where I'd see number combinations, anywhere from 15 to 30 times a day. And these would be, a lot of them would be like 1111, but a lot of them would be comboed, or a lot of them would be my specific numbers, or things that are just specific to me. And now, just every once in a while, just the other day down the street, I have this thought, and there's this number and this number back to back, right when I have the thought, and I'm like, okay, you don't need to show me anything else. I got you. Like, thank you for the thought. Thank you for the feeling. And, this is me, this is my kind of thing. So regardless of condition, regardless of who's around, regardless of whether we're putting too much effort or we're not putting enough effort, like trying to push through negative energy or whatever, recognizing it's about you and your experience, and then sharing that experience so other people can witness is, I think, a huge part of that. And I think just with the Masons, going back to that with the numbers, is that I think that they have developed a system of communication between one another that's very intricate and specific, and allows them to weave through energy with non-physical elements, right? If energy is energy is physical, but it's also non-physical, right? And so if energy is both, then as you're walking through the guide stones, you're physically experiencing something while energetically experiencing something different. So they've developed a high level of creating grids, creating spaces, using numerology, colors, expressions to have a physical and metaphysical experience when you go to these places, which is why they probably want a place like the Guidestones to be vilified, because to them it might be a spiritual place of enlightenment, and they want the conspiracy theorists to come there with hate and try and fuse it with hate, knowing that they've coded it against that, right? And so it almost fuels their fire, if you will. Now, I mean, that's all hypothetical, but it's just kind of the idea that, this is how energy works or whatever. And you can feed off of hate, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And those kinds of things. So
Yeah, and I was doing it in a mocking way because I did it at first. Someone was when I said, we're going, and someone commented and was like, "Hell yeah!" And I was joking. I was like, "Yeah, I might even do a mass meditation at 3:33, laugh out loud." And then I was like, "You know what? Let me do that." And then that happened, and I didn't go through with the meditation. It wasn't a safe place. And I will say that I overheard some of them talking. They were standing in the parking lot for quite some time, uh, and I, as they, I was just sitting down by myself, and I see some of them walking around with their wives or with girlfriends, whatever, and I hear them talking a little bit, and then I was like, you know what? This isn't a good energy. I'm going to go in the car. I was like, I'll just meditate in my car. And I get to the car, and this woman, one of the biker women, she comes close to my car, and she has her back, like she's standing somewhere where, you wouldn't be standing. She was a little far away from the Guidestones, off by herself, and she's standing there, and she's saying, I'm telepathically picking up from her. She goes, "If you're really telepathic, you'll leave. They're not going to let you do what you came here to do." And I was like, all of a sudden, then like two big vans and a pickup truck pull into the parking lot full of a whole bunch of people being loud, and you got all these motorcycles there. So I was like, we're rolling out of here, and we rolled out. But like it was so odd because the other two times we went, there was literally no one else there. And then that one time that I put out, and there were several families when we showed up, like, and we were chatting with them, and I had some tarot cards, and me and some random guy were just chatting, pulling tarot cards, and like learning about them. And then all of a sudden, it gets like within 10 minutes, and boom, all these people just start showing up loud and obnoxious, and just this negative energy. But ultimately, it was the universe, sending me back what I sent off, is that I was mocking them, and so it wasn't allowed.
well, and maybe too, it was can you turn that joke into a serious reality where it doesn't matter who's around, you do it, and you're recognizing you create an auric field, and that's it. Nothing can
Well,
enter or exit if you don't want it to, in that sense, because like
well,
the person you're telepathically communicating, they have to be a willing participant in that as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah, she
And
was
because
saying it to
I've
me.
had experiences like that too, where I didn't have a telepathic thing, but like, very like, but they were an unconscious willing participant in my transcendental experience, if you will.
Right. Well, and then afterwards, I heard her telling a friend of hers, she goes, And then I was telling him, because I'm very telepathic. I feel my frequency, I can hear it. But then she's saying to a friend of hers, she goes, and I said, if you're really telepathic and you can hear me, you'll leave now because they're not going to let you. And I heard her retelling the story, reliving it. But what I overheard physically with my own ears that made me get up and walk to my car was this one guy looked over at me, uh and then like so I was already like collecting my tarot cards. I started to put them away, and I stood up, and he goes, "Oh, look, it didn't take much, uh, you know, it was something." He turned to his buddies and he goes, "Look, we came all this way, and it didn't even take much." As I'm walking past him, and it's like, whoa, like, what do you mean? Like, you just locked eyes with me, and now you turn around and you're saying it didn't take much to get him to leave. He didn't say get him to leave, but that was the energy that I was picking up, and it was like, whoa, wait a second. Then I was like, I'll meditate in the car, but once that girl was just standing off by herself for no reason, it was like, oh, that's a whole other energy, and I was like, this is not a safe place to be doing this. So, we rolled out, and a motorcycle ended up following us. I don't know if this guy was with them, but there was a motorcycle just appeared, behind us, like 2 minutes down the road, and followed us all the way to the hotel. I don't know if, maybe that's something that I just, a false thing that I created in my mind, that some guy was just driving his motorcycle, and I added that onto it. But it was just nothing, like, nobody ever approached us in any negative way. I never was worried for anything of my safety or anything like that. I didn't feel like people were after us, but it just felt very wrong, and that people were there to not allow me to, do whatever it was that I was going to do.
Yeah, willing participants in your and you are a willing participant for them as well, right? Willing reflectors, all
Yeah.
just kind of showing each other. Yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to ask you, I know I want to get back to you and your thing, but having you on here as a numerologist, you're helping me break down all these numbers, and I felt the entire time I was like, that this was a completion trip. And now, as you're breaking down the numbers much further than I broke them down, and it is a completion. There is all 10 numbers all throughout the trip encoded in it, and whether or not it's people are doing that for me, which I doubt, it's more likely that it's me doing it for me through the universe, and the universe is just reflecting back to me, like it always is. But for whatever reason, that was just
Well, you could have gone to Tennessee or North Carolina or
that's a
Rocky
good
Top.
point.
You know what I mean? You went there. So because I have stories too where I could have gone here and I could have gone there. Somehow, some way, I went here, and while I was there, I saw things that I yeah, I have a story. I have a couple stories. I mean, some pretty recent where just like the amount of things that I could say and synchronistically, people would just think that I'm lying.
Yeah.
And it's okay, is what it is. But I mean, even just going into just simple things. But yeah, so definitely seeing it more personally and seeing your effect in that personal aspect will help the integration and the understanding, so that it's more recognized, just in the same way as like you start on that, you went and you stayed the weekend, and then by the time the weekend's almost over, you're realizing you could do it. It's like the integration, once the noticing is coming in, the integration can really happen. So as you continue to notice the numbers, you'll get more of the insights and things that you want, and more of the things that will keep perpetually working. Because I have this idea called eternal signatures, and it's the fact is that like we're all eternally running an energetic course, and if you have a physical body, then you have an eternal signature of your entire course. and this just being one section of that course. And so you eternally are talking to you, showing you signs, guiding you. A lot of this God consciousness is actually just another fractal of yourself, right? That eventually leads where all of us are back together to God, right? So if that's God, if Jesus is all of us and Jesus is this benevolent being that is creation of all and started to split himself in order to experience more and to dream the dream, if you will, right? Then you as this delineated form are then fractaled back towards God, if that makes sense. You would combine through your different layers back in towards God. So you have an eternal section that's just you, right? That isn't God, that's working for you, because that eternal section then has another section that eventually leads back to God, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so you're no separate from God, but we are exactly everything is nothing and nothing is everything, right? Men are immortal gods, or men are mortal gods, gods are immortal men. You're no separate than God, but you have different parts that are separate from God, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is for sure. Uh,
So
and
the
and
channeling, the intuitive nature, that's all like you helping you
right.
to move forward, so that in the physical, in this one space that we're in, you can do that. Because like you said, this is hell, or I don't know if this was before the podcast started, we were talking about this can be hell
I
or
think it was
heaven
during. Yeah.
during, yeah. And people can create hell or heaven here, right? And this is the stage upon which all is played. And so this is the envy of the entire universe, is to be in this mortal state in a certain
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I actually channeled something earlier that was talking about something along the lines of what you were just saying. So, it's and what we were talking about time earlier, and how we met. I, I'm going to be talking about time on someone else's podcast upcoming, and it was the Book of Enoch is included. So I mean, my life is nothing but synchronicities. It's some people see like the clock at 11:11 and they get so excited, but for me, I have 26 synchronicities with you in 7 seconds, and it's like, oh, okay, this is just Wednesday. It just everything is synchronistic when you start living your life towards, go towards the synchronicities. It's just, it increases so much. Uh, but I did want to bring it back to what you said way back in the beginning. I did take us off course there, so we're making a hard U-turn away from the Georgia Guidestones, uh, and you were talking about what happened to you growing up in the Mormon Church, and 2020 was a big year for conspiracy theories. It was a big eye-opening thing for missing children, and there's all these operations going on still that seem to be kicked off in Georgia last year, about 2 weeks after I started joining some Save the Children walks. Operation, I forget what the first one was called, but it was in Georgia. Operation Not Forgotten, where they saved 39 children. There was a lot of things in the news media where they're talking about that this is a psyop, or sorry, the news media didn't say that, but they're saying this is not real. This is a conspiracy theory. That these types of things don't happen. Nobody is worshiping Satan. Nobody is sacrificing children. Nobody is raping children the way that's claimed, and it's a conspiracy theory. And for me, that hurt my feelings very much because I didn't have what happened to you, but I had a a situation where someone my age at that time, 5, 6, 7 years old, was touching me, and I was a willing participant at some junction.
Where,
Maybe
well, was
fun
that
at first.
person of age?
No, they were the same age as me, and it's come to me recently. I've actually had to experience what caused him to experience it. I cleared the karma when I talked about it in my podcast. And then for the next several nights, I was seeing in my third eye, he is no longer with us. He committed suicide. And I was being shown through my dreams exactly what occurred to him. And I mean, it was horrifying. I had to experience what he experienced in a waking state. I wasn't even asleep yet. I was falling asleep and had to experience it. So when the news is saying that these things don't exist, that these things are conspiracy theories, it was very upsetting for me. And then all the people that I was living around at the time in Pennsylvania are calling me a conspiracy theorist when I'm talking about save the children. You know, I'm a youth softball coach at the time. I coached softball, 10U softball girls, and you know, we were practicing 3 to 5 times a week all winter long, and then COVID happened and we didn't get to play one game. And then all of a sudden, because I'm telling people, like, you know, about save the children, now the parents are suggesting that I'm crazy and that I shouldn't be coaching, and that I've lost my mind. And it's because they're being brainwashed by the media. And now here you are, and you have lived this real life horror. And you know, for someone who went through that to hear that on the media, you know, I could only imagine what that brings up for you. And maybe you're healed at this time, but still, for someone to suggest it isn't a real thing really upsets me.
Yeah, so many little breakoffs. I too have had a coaching experience where I basically volunteered and then was thrown under the bus. So that's an interesting kind of parallel. But and I also, just to get those 2 points out of the way, I knew 2020 was coming. I knew the control measures were coming. I just didn't know they'd look like that. I had been following this for some time, and I knew medical technocracy would be a part of it, but I never went down that rabbit hole in my mind to think that that's what they would use. And then when I saw it, I'm like, oh, brilliant. Like, these guys are brilliant, you know, and it's working. It's working, and everybody's shaming each other into this nonsense. So yeah, just to get those kind of 2 things out of the way with that. But yeah, I don't really get triggered when it comes to people saying, I don't believe you, because that's like my story. Like, a big part of it is like me being the youngest in my family and wanting to speak out, and them saying, no, hey, look, you're just young. You don't get it. This is the way life is. Don't you see this authority and this authority and this authority piece and this title and this thing? And these people are in charge. So what's happening to you is correct. Like, this is the way life is, right? And so you kind of like, well, I guess so. And then you start seeing something again. You're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This is wrong. My spirit's telling me this is wrong. You know, so I've held this line. And it's very multifaceted, very complex and layered, but also extremely simplistic when we just get to the core, which is that people who are in pain do things that are painful to others in trying to seek love. Because at the end of the day, it's all love. Even someone who's hurting somebody in a terrible way is actually just wanting love, right? And they're just not receiving it. And so I think we see a lot of that in the way that these things are go. I actually just had a thought too before we got here, because I was thinking about these things, and I was thinking about our conversation we were going to have today about this stuff. And I thought, man, just to drop in some sympathy for a second, it must be hard as someone who has a desire to have sexual relations with children, to, like, if you have that desire, to never be able to speak about it, right? Because what you suppress, right? What you repress, or what you suppress, I can't remember the phrase right now, but so the idea of like,
right.
It'll come back out, right? In this malicious, terrible way, right? And, or being able to like go through the process of talking that out so you can realize why you don't want to do it, whatever, right? So I just had that thought come to me earlier today about, man, it's hard for me to talk about these things, and I'm not the predator, you know what I mean? And it's hard for me to talk about it as a person who experienced these things, who received some of these things, right? And human trafficking was involved as well. My story gets a little changed at the end. So basically, it is my belief, based upon my personal experiences, that inside the Mormon Church and many other churches and many governments, there are networks of Luciferians who use rape, pedophilia, murder as ways to extort power, to coerce people into false narratives and energies, and to create a fear state around people. So even if you just went to one satanic ritual and then you got a bunch of money, and they, like, your construction business needed to get, approved, and you were going to get all this money, but hey, you got to come to my house, and then they rape you, and it's like, you don't have to come do this again, but now we have that on camera, so don't fuck with us. But here you go, you have all the success in the world now, type of thing, right? Just like selling your soul to the devil for the contract or whatever. So there's a lot of ideas there. Specifically, when it comes to me, and I'll just kind of keep it on a non-personal basis because I think that'll be easier. But when it comes to the predatory nature of things, it's like with what you're experienced I would venture to say never, but I will say very rarely. Very rare that another child touches another child, right? And the child who's initiating the touch, it's very rare that child hasn't been abused sexually by an adult, right? An adult, or another child first, that wherever it stems back to, it goes back to an adult, right? Who understands these principles and has this proclivity, right?
I totally agree.
So a very focused mind, and a mind that is looking for specifics. And that's very much what my predator was about, was a very specified type of predatory nature, very routine, rhythmic, and enacting, very powerful predator. And that predator was very selfish, and so it was surrounding their own desires and the way that they built their world around that, using their mind and focus energy, right, to create that world. So that I was exposed to other predators in the sense of, like, I was around them, but they were not allowed to prey on me in that sense, right? Because my predator was very much like not going to share, me specifically, right? There are other people, I'm sure, whatever. And so looking at the sexual component of that aspect, it's been a journey. It's been one hell of a journey coming through that, working through understandings around, having a porn addiction and using porn to understand what rape isn't, even though I'm watching a different form of rape, but this is more consensual in that sense, because I just, as a child, seen a lot of rape, seen murders, seen human trafficking, been a part of it, not myself being trafficked, but being around people being trafficked, being a part of the process of it, right? And these kinds of things. And so when I look at, like, Save the Children, or when I look at these kinds of things, it is true. But the Pizzagate thing with a pizza plate, like, they make it so stupid and so simply untrue that they want you to scoff at it. So they put a bunch of BS out about Comet Pizza, and they put the symbols in there on purpose, right? And they put the bullshit in there, and then they hire a guy to go shoot a fucking gun in the ground, and they make it look like shit and garbage because they want it to do that. Because part of the reason is they're going to save these kids, but we're never going to save these kids because part of that underground railroad, Operation Underground for the kids, probably coerced with pedophiles in there, or controllers, or whatever it is. I very rarely believe that some type of organization has purity to it, because where there is so much purity, there is also so much darkness. Just that's why the Mormonism component was such a great vehicle for these guys, is because there's amazing, wonderful Mormons who serve and are kind and are loving and devoted to their religion. And what that does is it blinds them from the fact that there are evil men in power positions within the church, and often in power positions within the church. And there's even an op-ed from the 90s of a high leader in the church discovering this, saying that this is a real phenomenon. Satanic ritual abuse is a real phenomenon, finding cases, documenting it. So big document talking about this and saying we need to take this seriously. This is a real thing. This is in the 90s, you know. And so that, for me, it's like, say whatever you want, call me conspiracy, whatever you want, it's fine. I don't really care, because, you know, when you've seen it, it's like, you know, I'm not trying to convince you. I'll just say it the way I say it, with conviction, because that's what it is. This is what I've lived. Believe it, not whatever you want, you know what I mean? And so I've just seen the ability for men to focus their proclivity negatively based upon their own pain, based upon the fact that they haven't dealt with their own problems and been able to express them or find ways to release them through the body or through the spirit. Most likely because they were probably sexually abused or abused in some way, right? And predominantly sexual abuse just kind of continues on. And I think that's a huge part of our society is males saying that it's weak to expose the fact that you've been violated sexually. And I mean, I was a fucking child. What do you want me to do? You know, literally, there's a lot of stories I can tell you about things that I tried to do and how, you know, this person got punished or I got punished or, you know, whatever it might be, right? And or how, like, I'm literally like 3 years old. Like, what can I, how much, you know, because when you look at my baby video on my birthday when I'm 2, you watch it, I seem very normal. And then when it immediately cuts to when I'm 3. And then there's no more video after that. There's other separate videos, but this is like my original like baby video, if you will, or whatever. And when I look at myself, I just say, who is that old man? You know, who I know what changed. I know what happened, you know, in that sense. I mean, I'm not an absolute arbiter of all truth, but I have my truths. And I look at that 3-year-old, and then I see pictures when I was 6, and I know things that happened around that time. And I saw a picture and I said, one time when me and my mom were going through photos, and I said, I don't even know who this guy is. And it was me at 6 years old, right? I have no idea who this kid is. And all of that comes from, you know, the fact that what somebody is doing when they perpetrate on another person essentially is asking that person to hold space for their emotional problems, right? And so it's very unfair to do that to a child because they have no way of consenting. But to do it in a manner that isn't even just saying something, but is to physically or sexually do it. Because what you start doing is adding layers of that space holding, in the sense of like, now not only are you going to have to energetically hold space for me or verbally hold space for me as I verbally abuse you, but then I'm going to physically abuse you, and now you're going to physically have to hold that space, and then I'm going to sexually abuse you. Now you're going to sexually have to hold that space, right? And then you start to get, so all the layers of the human experience start to become perverted in there, or have a perversion element where you now have been holding space and have no idea that you're just receiving this person's emotional trauma and pain upon yourself, and you know, can't block it out because you don't have any of that understanding or whatever. And I think so much of what's happening in male culture and in culture in our world today is like, in these men's circles that I've been in and stuff too, it's like, you know, they talk about porn addiction. It's wonderful. I'm glad that they do that. You know, it's a tough thing. And especially, I mean, women are attracted these days, and it's accessible, and it's a sexualized culture. I mean, this is a fight that we are in as men, as far as like, and women too, of course, but I'm, staying with that men angle, to control our orifices, to control our genitalia, and to use our spirit and that creation power wisely, right? But I don't hear a lot of them talking about being traumatized sexually, being raped, having molestation happen to them, or these kinds of things, and maybe a lot of them haven't. But I also know that is the line in our culture. Is like, if you're a man, you don't talk about your weakness. You don't talk about the fact that you've experienced that weakness, that someone had control over you. If you were in the clink, you don't talk about getting raped in jail, right, or whatever it is. And I, that's a horror. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave that there, not even feed the energy to that, but just the idea of these kinds of things too, of that, even in conscious men's circles, this is still a very challenging subject. This is still a very, very tough subject for a lot of people to broach. Not just my specific horrific story, but more so to say the sexual trauma that gets repressed in males and then shows up in marriage, shows up with kids, or an uncle who molested the niece, or, the whole thing. It's everywhere. And most often, the predator is usually somebody close, or around. It's very rare that I mean, I wouldn't say it's very rare, but it's rare that a predator is just in your neighborhood and then just going out and selecting kids. They want an emotional attachment, because the predator, in their narcissistic and psychopathic mind, depending on the level of those things, right, is looking for someone to worship and to connect with, for the emotional connection. It's not just the action. It's actually very rarely about the action of penetration or the action of molestation. That's what the predator is looking for. It's actually more so that emotional connection of purity that a child would bring, because the child has no default of this and that to give you something else. So the child generally is just going to give you a very pure response, whatever it is, whether it's rejectionary or accepting, right? And so and then you're also, as a predator, projecting that pain and that emotion, and when the child, which is more receptive and acceptive because you're an adult, right, then you almost feel validated by that, right? And so these are all things that I've thought about through my healing journey, about why I would be perpetrated on in a certain way, why I would experience these kind of things. What was this person looking for? What happened to them? What was the point of all of this? Because I've thought about it with myself as well, as like, if I carry this, what will come? If I don't speak this out, what will come? What was I being trained to become versus what am I now? And I think that my predator always knew that I was never them. And in many ways, as horrific as it was, they did me a service by rejecting me from the pathway that they took. Because I think they knew my spirit and essence was different, but very much, if they wanted to continue to push me towards the direction of being their mentor, being their student, being their apprentice, if you will, that would have been part of my more a part of my reality than it was. And instead, I became a useless, rejected thing because I no longer was proclivitous to their perpetration.
Wow, that is some very deep stuff there, but there was a lot of good information in there. And you were talking about how hard this is for men to speak on, and I fully agree with you. It was when I was, I think, 28 years old, maybe I was 27 or something like that, is when
Saturn
they,
return, baby.
yeah, for sure. I had this girlfriend who brought it out of me. She was the first person I ever told, and I was like, I said to her, I was like, "You better marry me now, because I told you my deepest, darkest secret." And I'm not with that person any longer, but it was a repressed memory. I guess I knew about the memories the whole time. Oh, my power's flickering a little bit, so hopefully we stay. But So it was so hard for me to speak on that. I never said anything to my current girlfriend, uh, or my parents or anybody until I said it on the podcast. Just me and the computer, and I had the space and I felt the freedom enough to share my story, and it was such a relief. And a lot of society today, people act like they're strong if they don't show weakness. But you're showing weakness by pretending that you don't have weakness. You're actually strong when you show that you have no weakness by telling everything. Uh, if you show all your cards, then everybody can see. Then nobody can hold anything over you. Nobody can. There's nothing lurking in the back of your mind that you can be blackmailed for, or just whatever. There's nothing stronger than you because you went and spoke it. So you're not weak for speaking the truth, and especially a child as young as you're talking about, 2, 3 years old. I was 5. It's even 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Maybe okay at 14 and 15 years old if you're with someone your own age. But that again, that goes back to, well, why are those kids wanting to be sexually promiscuous at that age? And, do they have, uh, is there a proclivity in them to be, masturbating at 7 years old, uh, versus like everyone else starting at like maybe 11, 12, 13? And it's like, well, 7 years old, I'm seeing the world in a very sexual way, and I'm being aroused by my first grade teacher. I'm in first fucking grade, and excuse my language, but and I'm being aroused by my teacher, and it's like, that's, had that experience not happened to me, what type of trajectory may my life had taken? And it's, if everything wasn't sexual for me with me in my life, uh, how am I treating girls when I'm 14 versus how I did treat girls when I was 14? It's so much to it. And it goes back to this adult who, for whatever reason, had this urge and this need to do what he did to someone else, and then that child, and then that child is doing it to not just to me but to the entire neighborhood, uh, and it just spawns off all
And
these
the
other
shame and
things.
the guilt that they carry, and it's also females too. I mean, there are plenty of
Yeah.
instances of female adults raping children, as well, so I wouldn't rule them out in
Well, and
that
that's
sense. I know we were
fantasized
talking about,
about
yeah,
in
yeah,
our culture. It's horrible.
yeah, it's glorified, right?
Yeah, glorified.
And yeah, it fantasized as well. I mean, all you have to do is go to a porn site right now, and what do you see? Stepmom, stepbrother,
Yeah.
stepsister, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, and it's just that constant push of like, you could fuck your family, it's fine, right?
Right.
Like this, like these ideas, it's just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
that's crazy, right? And in the same way that I said that earlier about, man, it must be hard to have these thoughts, um, and not be able to express them, right? Same thing. It must be hard to have been molested, to been raped, to have had a suppressed trauma, whatever it is, and not be able to talk about it. And even if you haven't had a suppressed trauma, let's say you just had thoughts about these things in school and those things affected you in some way, and then you're like, whoa, I can't have these thoughts. Like, let's say you have a normal life, and then you see something, whatever, and then you're like, you have a thought about doing something, you're like, I can't have those thoughts. It's like, wait a minute, like, everybody has every thought in a certain sense. Maybe there's a space to talk about it, right? And so unless we start opening conversation for change, then the change really won't start occurring, in my opinion. And like you said, it's not a weakness, it's a strength, because you're saying, this is what I've fucking been through, this is what I've dealt with. And you know like I said, my cards are on the table, and you know, hurt me if you want. I've told a lot of people, you know, intimate details about my story, you know, wanting them to hold space or just sharing and relating. Oftentimes it's hard for me to find space holders. It can be very hard for me to find space holders who I feel are adequate, that I could legitimately share, you know, detailed things and have them receive it. Right. That is a kind of a rare thing for me. And so oftentimes I'll just share certain details and not have the expectation of holding any space, but just more of like relating, like, oh, I get you because this kind of thing, whatever. And so what I've had happen is people try and use that against me, say nasty things about it, say, you know, whatever. And, you know, my general makeup is that doesn't really bother me. And I think that they're very foolish, because if they knew me, they would know that that's not the weak point. That's not the point to get at me. But I think for other people who maybe haven't gone through as much, who maybe haven't sat with themselves about these things like I have, right? Who are more on the suppressed scale of not talking about it. If they opened up, right, talked about it, and then were shamed or somebody made fun of them for it, well, guess what? That thing's going back in and it's never coming back out. And I'm never telling another girlfriend ever. And I'm never going to look weak again. And I'm going to be the man all the time. Right. And you know, those kind of things, and the lack of sex was never discussed in my home, really. And that's you know, a huge problem, because you know, it's not on the table. There's nothing to talk about. So it's all repressed. It's all something's wrong.
And so hidden.
Exactly. And we can't really expand the vocabulary around this. We can't really get men into positions of full conscious states without, you know, talking about this problem within communities surrounding molestation and rape, particularly male to male. We'll just kind of keep it there for right now, as far as to say, because that's a huge thing. And I've read in previous past cultures that males were basically able to have sex with anybody they wanted, male and female in a certain sense, and did, you know, in indigenous times maybe did that more, or like in, you know, from a negative angle, or just the fact that was more loose sexual society, right? But in like tribes, like they all slept in the same hut, and so if mom and dad were having sex, the kids were right there. Now, was that traumatizing? Maybe on some degree, but maybe also they're just saying, oh, mommy and daddy are making love or something, right? Maybe and maybe, you know, they choose times or watch the kids and we're going to do this kind of thing. But it was less of this taboo and more of just a natural nature process, which it is, right? And they, you know, and so the kids maybe are seeing it a little bit different in the angle of how we doing it. But that's because there's conversations, that's because it's open on the table. It's less, you know, this hidden part. Whereas like our society now is about the openness of that sexuality. I mean, even women posting a lot of things online and then saying like, it's my right to do so. Well, yeah, it is. But like, you know, when someone who has an OnlyFans says that their son's friend is subscribed to them and their son's friend's like 16, it's like, well, what are we really putting out there? You know, what are we really doing? And it is your right, but also just like we do understand that like the reason that we have clothed the reason I don't go walk around without shorts on is because I think that would be, if people saw my penis all day in this society, it'd probably be traumatizing. Just like and I don't know who would be traumatizing too. If a woman was walking around naked all day, every day, she's going to traumatize somebody. You know, we don't know who it is. We don't know the triggers. We don't know what's happened.
Well, it's distracting at the least, and it's going to get the focus is going to be on the genitalia, and it's going to be like, oh, you know, a penis, an ass, boobs, vagina. You know, it's just like that's the monkey mind is just going to go to that because it's so hidden and it's so frowned upon, and it's like you know, it's looked in society as, you know, if a woman's showing cleavage, if a woman's showing cleavage, it's like, oh, you know, look, as, you know, get your looks in, but then On the other hand, like you were just saying, it could be that a woman saying, oh, well, I don't want this person looking at me. Like, I want to be seen, but I only want to be seen by who I want to be seen with. Well, you should be covered up, and you should only be showing who you want to be showing. It shouldn't be this game of you're going in public. Now you're feeling shamed and you're feeling watched, and you don't, that you really shouldn't dress that way if you're going to feel that way. And it's not that a woman shouldn't be able to wear what she wants, and she should be able to show off her body in the way she wants, but you have to understand you're going to attract unwanted attention. No no matter what you do in life, you're going to attract unwanted attention. And if your unwanted attention is about sexual things, and
You'll get unwanted sexual attention.
yes, and that unwanted attention could be more than just attention. It's not just looking. It could be something much more, because that person may be going through something.
And that's container versus container and society. I had another C word, I can't remember. But as far as the expression, right? It's like in indigenous cultures, women were topless. And guess what? The culture, and this is a reframe from what I just said, because I maybe said it a bit abrasively, but the culture there isn't sexualizing boobs. It probably is in some degree, but most people understand that it's also not a sexual thing, right? As well too, right? But in our culture now, currently, when you post your ass online, it is sexual. Why? Because our culture is sexual, right? Our culture doesn't have the delineation to say that, no, this is just a free woman in a free expression, and it's not sexual. Now, we can get there by people talking about these things or doing them differently, right? But if we look at some of the material that's going in for children about masturbating at under 10 years old, and teaching children, literally making cartoons about this kind of stuff, right? Disgusting type of stuff, right? We understand that our culture is not going away from that. It's actually incentivizing. It's creating websites that allow any random girl now to make herself into a sexual object for money. And that's not me speaking that. That's not me saying that that's the case. That's the culture that we live in, because our boobs are sexualized currently, right? And I know a lot of women are fighting hard not to be that way, right? And all of these kinds of things. So when we look at the culture we're in, we have to understand the game that we're playing in, the realms that we're in, the container that we're in. So you have to, if you want to express yourself naked, like I went to this static dance event, and it's a sober container, for 3 days. You're not supposed to leave. Sober event, consent is key. Well, there are naked people there. Well, of course, they're in the right space to express themselves that way, properly, healthily, positively, right? And I'm not looking at them and saying, oh man, she's naked, let me just go over there and be a man, you know what I mean? No, I'm looking like, guess what? I'm so much of a man, I can just sit here and let that person express themselves. And that's what being a man is, right? Is I don't have any desire for this person except for them to be feeling free, because we've agreed to come to this place and be in this type of container, right? And so there's the difference between, like, what we put out in society, what we put out online, it's not an agreed upon container. Nobody's on Instagram saying, I agree to this. Now, there might be consent with something like, age restrictions for porn websites or OnlyFans or something, right? But still, there's workarounds for that, one. And two, it's like, you can't control who sees you in those lights, because you're not in control of the container or have full consent around the container. And when I say container, just the apparatus of where you're at. So I think that it's vastly important to understand kind of that difference between yes, the free liberation of ourselves and that expression, versus the false ideas that society is feeding us. And man, it must be really tough dating as an 18, 19, 20-year-old right now. And this 19-year-old girl is hot as hell, and she has an OnlyFans, and I'm subscribed to her, right? And I like her, but I can never date her. Well, there's this really great girl down the street, and we hang out, and I really like her, and I want to date her, but she's not sexual enough for me because I'm getting sexual online. You know what I mean? And I'm desiring that fantasy. I mean, what a tough sled. So they need, not to say that they need that for sure, need what I'm about to say, but in my opinion, from what I can say, they need me to speak my truth about having sexual trauma, about having sexual challenge, about what I know about sexuality, so it can help them to deal with these new challenges that I didn't have to deal with. Because there's going to be more. It's going to be VR. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It's going to be never leave your fucking house and you're having sex anytime you want and you can stimulate yourself however you want type of thing. I mean, that's the reality that we could head into, you know? And so creating real space, showing truth, and allowing men to talk about these things, a good man makes everyone around him safer, stronger, better, whatever you want to say. So if I love these women around me who want to express freely, I need to be on my A game because they're putting themselves in a vulnerable state. So I not only need to not attack that vulnerability, I need to protect it from outside sources as well. These kinds of things. Well, how do I protect that? One, I know myself. And two, I share truths, whether that be the truth of sexual trauma or that be the truth of how to start a fire, whatever it might be. And you stay that steady line, that discipline, warrior discipline, right? And you love your woman, so you let her express, and you use your powers of your mind to be a magician, and that's how you become the king, and the king will preside. And so I think that there's great power in sharing your story and truth, and it also allows for people to start to create culture that isn't so hypersexualized, and that isn't about, maybe you want to post nude photos of yourself online as a guy, right? But you don't want to do it about sex or OnlyFans. So maybe you create a private group and you say, hey, I need a place to express myself naked. And I know you're a friend and you're a friend and you're a friend, and I know you've seen me naked before. I'm going to make this group. Are you okay with that? And they said, yeah, sure. We've seen you naked. It's cool. Oh, wow. That was a great photo. I saw you naked in the woods. That was crazy. That was a cool photo. I don't think you're being sexual, but I see it. I respect it. So you can control the message you put out. And I think a lot of people aren't understanding the control element of the message. And I think a lot of males are sexually frustrated, sexually repressed. And that's why you see a dick pic in the DMs. I mean, I'm, guilty as charged, and there's been a lot of great women who have taught me a lot of great things and shown me respect when I didn't deserve it, and given me the opportunity to show them respect. And I've had a lot of really amazing women throughout the last 10, 12 years of my life. We go back further, but dating life in that sense of like, who have really helped me to have the ability to express myself in healthy and unhealthy ways. And I received the same in many senses as well. And I appreciate all of those reflections because it's helped me grow into more of the person that I want to become rather than not. But we need each other to create these spaces so that we can go through these things and there be less of it possibly.
Yeah, that was. I agree with everything you said. That was. We have to, as a society, we have to get out of the fear of sex, the shame, the guilt, the doubt, all the unknowns, because it's such a powerful thing, and it's like it's sitting there knocking at our door, and we're pretending we're not home. It's like, shut off the light, shh, everyone quiet, and it's just like little things that grow into bigger things. I'll just take porn for example. You start off watching porn, say nothing ever happened to you. You're 14 years old, you're watching porn for the first time. And it's just, maybe you're watching, as a teenage boy, maybe you're watching Girl on Girl, or you're watching just a man and a woman, and that can quickly escalate into, now you're watching, like you were talking about earlier, stepmom porn, you're watching teacher porn, you're watching all these different things, you're fulfilling these fantasies, you're creating fantasies that never existed before, because of, oh wow, that was such a powerful feeling, that orgasm, and it had to be because I was watching that video, because that video really gave me a sensation, so that must be something I really like, and if I like that, maybe I'll like this, and you just, the rabbit hole of porn addiction, I mean, it's quickly, you're going from one extreme to another. I mean, people uh, make jokes about it. Comedians often, they will joke about it, but there's a lot of truth said in jest. It's pretty much the only way that it is acceptable to talk about, is if you're saying it in a joking manner.
And you
Uh,
stay in that state of hyper arousal. And then when you have to come back, you need to match that high, quote unquote. Not
yeah.
always, but in the sense of like you say, these extremes, and our culture currently is pushing towards that extreme,
Mm-hmm.
and educating children younger about, like, literally, I don't know if these are in the education system yet, but I've seen cartoons talking about, you know it's okay to talk about your genitals, and that everybody has that. Okay, I'll agree with that first part. Like, I think, kids around 8, 9, 10 should be educated with their parents, should have a day where the parents come. And yes, it's a tough conversation, but maybe you have a private conversation with the teacher who's teaching that, or whatever, right? Do it however it's done, and, create that kind of way. But then the next part of that cart, and, maybe a cartoon is part of it, as far as, a brief overview, and then having personal conversations, parents to children, with maybe a mentor involved, who can help the parents kind of have this kind of conversation with them, being educated on it. But the second part starts talking about them saying it's okay to touch yourself, right? And, this is kind of those elements of spiritual practice too, where it's like, oh, you don't have to stop masturbating, just start practicing tantra, right? Start practicing black tantra, and because in the white tantra, you're not supposed to, or whatever. But it's about, like, making it these things. Oh, it's okay for you to, lower your energetic condition as a child by ejaculating, right? Because what happens when we ejaculate is, there's a fluid in our mind. It's called the chrism, and the chrism sits between mother and Mary and Joseph, and it's the Christ. The chrism is the Christ, right? Born from Mary and Joseph, the hypothalamus and the hippocampus. And that chrism fluid goes down your spine and then returns up your spine, and it's life force energy. It's kundalini in a certain sense. And when you deplete your energy, when you ejaculate, when you orgasm, right, you drain your chrism fluid from that cycle, and you giving life force. Because when a man is ejaculating, he's literally depleting his energy to give his energy to create life, right? And I'm just speaking from that term because that's what I know better than the feminine, and I'm sure there's some kind of process that I, anyway. And so literally teaching them to be more docile. It's just like the flat earth for me. It's like one of the first things you're shown is the globe, because, like, you live in the wrong place now. So now you're easier slave, right? So now remove the energy that you can create within yourself and the power that you have. Now you're an easier slave. Now you're more asleep, more and more and more and more asleep, right? And all of these little layers, processed food, blah, go down the line, calcifying the pineal with fluoride in the water, whatever you want to say. It's like all about removing that divinity. And the sexual component is such a huge one, because sex is really, literally love and creation. Like, all of this everything we see in the world is a product of sexual energy, period. And I'll argue to the teeth against anybody who wants to go into that or whatever. But just to say, it's like, this all came from the expression of the drive of creational energy. And so when we can take the sexual and turn it into what it's not, then we remove your creative ability. And what is this game in Earth? It's a creator's game. And if I can make you not a creator and I make you create for me unknowingly, I'm winning the game. You know what I mean? And so as men who build the world, if we want to rebuild the world and we want to change the way this world is, we have to take our creator power back and create and build, right? And we do that by being sexually mature. We do that by being honest and truthful. And we do that by recognizing morality and keeping moral standards, right? And those kinds of things guide us to the point where we start to lose these patterns of perpetration, and we start to move into patterns of leadership and true patriarchal Christ-like consciousness.
I did want to go right back real quick to when you said what happened to you. You witnessed murders, multiple. Were
Yeah.
any of these things ever go to the police, or were they just unsolved reports? Did anything come of these?
When police movement was finally created towards these things, the police actually helped my perpetrator and
Wow.
defended him. And so I realized, I was like, what am I doing? Why did I think that this would change, in the sense of like, if the church is co-opted at that level, the police, of course the police are, like
Right.
these are the grunts of the Mason. The policeman thinks he has power, but really he doesn't understand that the laws he's enforcing are draconian, and he's literally upholding this heathenistic system, and he's only enforcing the law of man, not God. And that's, his true sin in a certain sense. And I have nothing against policemen personally, just to say that that's a philosophical reality of what they're actually doing. And they do protect. But my personal experience with the police in that way is they didn't protect me. They actually protected the person who, was committing these things.
Are
And
you the
like I
one
said,
that
these are
went to the
large
police?
networks. No, I actually was not. And I wanted to give him a statement. I was trying to tell my perpetrator, and at 3 or 4 in the morning, 2 policemen, and I know that they were specifically called because one of them was not like a patrolman cop. He was a detective cop. He was there. I was in front of the perpetrator's house, sleeping, waiting to follow them in the morning, blah, blah, blah. They pulled me off of him, and I gave them a pretty hysterical type of statement there because I was in a trauma response and didn't know that, that's where I was at. Like, I knew that I was responding not how I wouldn't want to, but anyway, just to say that, they, when other people went to the police, they went to actually multiple different agencies, different cities, state authorities, etc. And at every turn they encountered resistance or just something that was wrong. It's the same way when people in the church go to talk to the bishop and then say, hey, bishop, looks like they touched my, somebody touched my kid, this kind of thing. The bishop then refers to the stake president, and then the stake president, they usually say, hey, don't seek for justice, seek for forgiveness, and nip it in the bud kind of there, right? They have these levels of aspects that where there's safety in the networks. And yeah, just like the government is co-opted, the police, all this kind of stuff. It's like faith in the system is extremely minimal for me. And that's been a hard thing, is because I'm a very primal person, and literally men to men in old societies, like if I saw this going on, I would kill. Just from that primal medieval caveman,
Reactionary.
and not even reactionary, but also just more of like justice. Like,
Okay.
this cannot, this does not happen in our society. This is what happens if you do this. You're dead, type of thing, or whatever. You don't get to exist because you're taking away the choice of another being, right? Do I know what to do as a consequence for pedophilia? No. But they're taking away a divine right of another being without consent. So if their divine right gets taken away without consent, I don't know. But just to say, from like that primal element, it's more of that primitive stuff, more of a justice, one-to-one justice reaction, if you will, right? But the way the justice system is, it is what it is in our country. So go through the system, beat them that way. It's like, well, when you start to get into the system, you realize the system is actually not working for the victim. It's working for the perpetrator more often than not. And we see a lot of people in the justice system too who are shouldn't be there, or who are focused on when there are many others that should be. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's that's so horrible that happened to. I mean, that all the stuff that we're talking about. It's so horrible, and
Deep stuff.
yeah, very very deep. And hearing that the police are in on it, that the church is in on it, multiple cities, multiple states, multiple agencies. This it's so mind blowing.
And
And
it's not every element of the police, just to say, it's just the
right,
same thing. There's you as a policeman or as a detective or as a church leader, you get your role, and that role has so much power. And then you think, well, I don't know what, as a bishop, I don't know what to do here. I've already told my higher ups, I've told the people I need to, I've done everything I can do with my power. It's kind of out of my hands type of thing or whatever, right? So it's very often, unless you see somebody take up the crusade, quote unquote, that somebody in a power position in government or religion or whatever will go beyond their power limit. And that in itself is like a pyramid scheme that keeps the control level at where it is, in that sense.
yeah, and it is rape, especially of a child. It is other than murder. It is absolutely taking away the free will of someone else, and that is, uh, divine law is free will. We all have the will to do whatever, and I struggle myself with, I believe that everything happens for a reason. Everything is happening for you. That we don't necessarily make every single detail of what we're going to do before we come into life, but I have a strong belief that we set up we want to experience certain feelings, and we kind of sign up for whatever that is. And the one thing that I struggle with uh, in this, the only thing that I actually struggle with is rape. How does rape figure into this? And the only thing that I can come up with is that it's a karmic thing, that somebody is experiencing it now because they were the perpetrator before, and now they have to experience the other side. And I'm not totally sure that that's the reason, but that's the only reason I can conceptualize in my mind to logically make sense of why this would exist. But then again, it's like, well, who was the first one to do it? Because there had to be a first. And if there was a first and that first person wasn't a victim before, before they were a perpetrator. So how does that come about? And it's the one thing that I'm not comfortable with telling myself that. And I think about it often. I'm like, how is that possible in a world of free will, in a world that we're creating everything for ourselves, and we're experiencing all these things on purpose? There's a lot of horrible things out there, and I don't want to say rape is worse than anything else, but in the scale of everything, I could see someone who wants to come in as a child with cancer and then dies at 3 months old. I could see someone wanting to do that, but to and maybe, rape is something that propels you, the slingshot effect that propels you, but it's just one thing that I struggle with more than anything else, in that I can't really conceptualize how it is from the start how it would have been beneficial?
So for me, the way you described it's a bit to A to B for me, as far as like this means this. But I can see as far as the mind trying to compartmentalize why it would do that, right? But for me, it's like, if all of this is sexual energy, if all of this is creation, you know, in the physical world, in the physical world, you are removing choice from the vessel of another person and the condition that you're creating within the vessel. I mean, literally, you could brutalize a body, right? I could kill a body, right? I'm removing the choice. But eternally, energetically, and spiritually, you always have a choice, regardless of that physical experience, right? You can be yelling at me in the face, you can go to kill me, and I can choose to let you strike me down. You know what I mean? Or I can choose to fight you back, right? I have that kind of choice as an adult. And with the kid, you don't have the same kind of choice, but you still spiritually, eternally have. When a child pops out, they're still an eternal being. You know what I mean? They just are they're just in a different vessel. They're in a vessel that's not developed yet, right? So eternally, energetically, you still have that choice. And I think when we think about sexual creation, and the truth of it, that it's created everything, that all of this is an expression of love and sexual creation, choosing to experience these things when you come here is about choosing to see the reverse of beautiful creation, choosing to see the ugly pain, the falsity there, and then choosing to say, you know what, I'm spiritually strong enough that I can handle my parent dying when I'm 10. I can handle the divorce when I'm 7. I can handle being raped by this person, because I'm going to let my vessel change and I'm going to heal within the vessel, because it was really only, yes, energetically, spiritually, we did have that hurt, but you know what? I'm an eternal being. You can't change my eternal self ever, because I have all components, just like you have all components, and I'm self-contained, you're self-contained, because we're all one in that sense. So yes, you did affect my vessel, and you probably did affect my spirit because I allowed it. But what I'm going to do is let my vessel change, let my spirit change, and I'm going to heal, right? That's why we can heal, right? And so in the same way, we can heal that sexual creation, and this is what I create with sexual creation, right?
So you're
And this
saying it's more of
change.
an opportunity for healing, because there's so much damage maybe in that DNA strand that there's automatically going to produce this biological, uh, or excuse me, not biological, but the biological body, because of the physical DNA, it's already encoded and it's going to happen. And, maybe I can go in there to end the cycle. Is that what you're kind of
And
saying?
that's something that's very, very true for me. Metaphysically ending this cycle, I have long stories that I've created, and or put pieces together of truths to try and make it make sense of, maybe this went back to the Native American times, and maybe there was something that happened there, and then that got passed down the line, and I get to be the one that stops it. That's part of my mission. These kinds of things, these are good things these are good stories to rewrite the old stories, the old processing, but people do have to carry it. People do have to carry the pain. And I'm sure that not every moment of the day a predator's thinking about perpetration. You know what I mean? It's like they're carrying their own pain, and they might even be thinking about their own pain so much, or that feeling, that then they go to perpetration, right? Or whatever it might be. But that reality of, again, getting to choose to heal, getting to choose to go through that experience, and even somebody who has done this experience completely negative in a certain sense is learning a lot, has the option to heal in certain ways, has the option, even if they did something terrible, to do different things or whatever, right? And so it's this constant merging of that, and that's a lot what sex is, in the sense of, like, sex is just this space, this feeling, this vibe, this energy. It's this and that. It's all kinds of everything. It's all of the physical things in our world. It's all the spiritual things that we create or whatever. So I think that when we're talking about this and we're viewing it from that why choose to experience this kind of thing, or why would somebody want to rape someone or whatever. I think a lot of it is there's a lot of unconsciousness, but there's also an understanding that these energies exist because maybe we've gotten too out of line in other areas, or there's an understanding that we need to change the energy that's here to get us to a new place of resonance, right? And so, yeah, I didn't start this cycle, right? But I'm not going to perpetuate it. And I'm an omega in that way, and I like that. But I'm also an alpha, a beginning, in the sense that I'm starting something new, and I'm trying to do something new, and I'm going to do something new. And so if we've been in these old patterns of behavior, people have to come down here and experience things to get us to change them out. And yeah. And I think there's just a general track of energy going back and forth, and that these things that are really heavy or hard to talk about or really tough for people to deal with in life are just really people always wanting to kind of look at moving forward, instead of realizing that the human is both inherently perfect and inherently flawed, is both a very beautiful, kind being, but also capable of malicious evil as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That is so true. And this episode has been, we kind of touched a little all over the place, but this really at the end here, I guess maybe last 45 minutes to an hour, you've been teaching me so much throughout the whole episode, but it's really, I feel it's hitting home for me in very specific ways for myself, and you're helping me understand things from new points of view. And I want to thank you so much for coming on here and talking about being so open with your story, and just talking about everything we talked about tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just want to say too, as we're closing out, I know that some of these subjects are heavier or challenging to talk about, and maybe sometimes something came up that, ooh, you didn't like what you heard, or it was hard to take. But just understand that what we're really doing is expanding the vocabulary around these topics, so that we can get to the space where people can have conversations about these things in more healthier ways. And the way to do that is by pioneering and conversing and putting that out there. And also that I have respect for all beings. I believe you have respect for all beings, and that this wasn't about any type of form of negativity or smearing, or any type of specific will being infringed upon what people do or how people act. It was just more of a conversation surrounding our personal experiences and what's happened with them, and how we have, what we see from them. And I wanted to say too that if you are a female as well too, but particularly again, if you're a young male, or a male in general, maybe you're in your 40s and this is unearthed for you, like you said, for me, it all kind of came back at once as well too, and came back over time after that, but I had an initial thing. So if you're having challenge, or you've gotten through you've listened to this podcast and you're thinking about, well, I do want to have some of these conversations, what I would do is I would urge you to write down 3 different names of people that you believe that you could have a conversation with, if you've never had a conversation about this, right? 3 different types of people you trust, and write them down. And then what I would do is handwrite them a note and hand it to them, and on the note I would say, is it okay if I talk to you about sex and sexual aspects? Would you be willing to have that conversation? So what you're doing is creating a container, right? A safe place from which then you can have a discussion about that kind of stuff. And maybe it's somebody you're not super close to because you don't want to change that relationship or whatever it might be, but just take that time and realize that if you feel like you need to go see a therapist, and you want, like, let's say you're 15 and you want to see a therapist about this, Talk to your parent. Say, hey, you know what? I want to see a therapist about sex. Okay, well, can we talk about it? Well, no, mom, I don't feel comfortable about it. Okay, whatever. But just start to get into the space where you can go have a conversation about yourself with somebody that you trust. And then that will allow you to bring out insights so that down the road, you don't have to put yourself through so much suffering to try and figure out why you're suffering. Because a lot of it for me was this unconscious unknowing of putting myself into more suffering, not knowing why I was suffering.
That is beautifully said. And I will just add on that if someone is triggered by anything, it doesn't really matter what it is in the world. If something is triggering you, that's a programmed response in yourself, and you need to face that trigger, and you need to reprogram your mind by thinking about it in a new, different way. Like if the word red makes you angry, you have to recognize that it's making you angry, and then you have to, however, you have to stop yourself from being angry. And eventually, when you hear the word red, eventually it will take you, however long it takes you, but eventually you'll be okay with hearing the word red. So it's the same idea as, talking about these, maybe it might feel cringe topics to you, that, you hear some of these words, some of these quote unquote buzzwords that are used, and you might want to turn off the podcast and you're like, no, I don't want to go there. But it's like, well, that's a programmed response in you. Why is that? You should really look into yourself of why you're being triggered for these words, because there may be, for me, it was it was a repressed memory that I had no access of from, the age of whenever it stopped. I don't even know what age that was until 27, 28 years old. So for 15, 20 years, whatever, it wasn't it wasn't something that I would have thought of. And if I would have heard people talking about this, then I probably would have been triggered into turning it off. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. But like, well, if I examine why is that triggering me, maybe then I uncover my repressed memories.
And show yourself compassion and empathy.
Mm.
Even if you are a procurer of negative energy in a certain sense, show your own self-compassion, because that will stop you from creating negative energy. If you've been the receiver of it, show your own self that compassion, because when you show your own self that compassion, you give yourself some love for what you've been through. You start to feel less victimized, and you start to give more love to everyone around you, and eventually get to the place where, like, if you can love your enemy, nothing can harm you in that sense. And so the reframing, the leaning into the triggers, the listening, just listening, observing, witnessing, very important. And then giving yourself that compassion with Christ-like love, knowing that this is all eternal and perfect, but that we're inherently flawed as human beings, and knowing that even when people are doing terrible things, they still just deep down want to be loved, and that they wouldn't be doing that terrible thing if they knew how to love themselves. Because if they knew how to love themselves, they wouldn't hurt you. Exactly. But because they never learned how to love themselves, and maybe they weren't even given love really, then maybe this is all they know how to love. And that's why you see people with parents who maybe were less than great, but at the end but as they've gotten older, they're like, you know what, like, I love you because I know that that's all you knew love was. And you know what, I can see it differently. I'm different now, and I'm going to do it different, but I can understand that you didn't. And that is what it is. And so find compassion for yourself through this process, and find spaces and containers and create them where you can have a healthy, productive conversation. And then you don't have to talk about it every day, or I'm not out here talking about this every single day, these kinds of things. I don't need to. And if I do need to, then the universe will show me, will provide opportunities like this one where I do need to share, what I've been through and those kinds of things. And I've done that by trying to give myself compassion and give other people compassion and empathy around me too, and love.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. The last thing that I want to say is that it's funny you set this appointment up for 7/7 at 7, and my email address is the Great Chakra Awakening 777
777.
at gmail.com. I love the 777s. On my birthday is December 7th. Seven's always been my favorite number, so it was funny. I when it's coming up, I'm into numbers a little bit, so I'm like, oh, that's a day, something's going to happen that day, and then boom, you set up the, like, for the last like month and a half, I'm like, something's going to happen on 7/1, something's going to happen on 7/7, and then I have two amazing conversations with two amazing people, and it's not me setting it up. I guess it is me setting it up because I am the universe, but it's just,
Co-creation.
yeah, it's just so wonderful how the world works.
Well, 7 chakras too.
Yeah.
So
Well, 7
it's
major ones.
yeah.
I found out that there's like 22 or something. That there's actually, it's probably more than that because our knees and our ankles and our elbows all have them, and I guess chakra is just it's a specific
Energy
term.
center.
Well, it's a specific term for how large the energy center is, because not if not the average person would consider your knees to be energy centers. They're tiny, so they wouldn't be big enough to be a chakra. So it's just very, it's the English language, not enough words, too many words,
Yeah. Well, and so it's the 7th month and the 7th day, and 7 is the spiritual sexual, like we said, and it's a 5-year. So it's the physical sexual. So I made sure that I wanted to do it on a 7 because I knew we'd be talking intellectually about challenging subjects. I knew you wanted to talk about sexuality. So I wanted both sexual component numbers to be there. And it's also a 1 day. And 1 is about breaking new energy, about male energy, new ideas, the divine light, the phallic. So 5, 7, and 1 kind of all things that we were all talking about, the masculine, sexual, changes, challenge, etc. So yeah, and then yeah, so
and I'm a 1 life path. So there you go with the 1.
exactly, yeah.
Uh,
So well, yeah, we can DM about that. I had some questions for you, but
yeah, well, you can hold on. I'll stop the recording in a second here. You can hold on. But is there any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience, or do you want to, give your social media where they can find you, those types of things?
I was gonna say it's a 19-day overall, and 19 is 1 through 9. It's kind of all things creation. So it's very karmic as well. So I think if you've heard this conversation, you are, experiencing some tethering, some karmic linking in this, as far as just that kind of trickle effect of all the connectivity between us. So just know that, and I want to appreciate anybody who's listened to this and to these viewpoints, and welcome anybody else's opinion of them. You can find me on Instagram. It's really the only place I'm at right now. I even deleted my Twitter, and that's at Kley Warren 44. So KLEY Warren WARREN 44 on Instagram, and that's the best place to connect with me. DM, whatever. I'm very active there because it's my only social media platform and where I promote and market things. And yeah, I'm grateful for the ability to share my story in a new way and to talk about these things, as I think these conversations are important. And I just hope that people walk away from this conversation feeling like there are more avenues of success and liberation and truth than just the ones that are being told to us. And that by showing compassion to ourselves and having hard conversations, we move ourselves towards those avenues and towards different paths of healing by doing so. So, yeah.
All right, and I will have all your information in the show notes when I put this out on the RSS feed, and I will have to have you on at some point again, because there was so much more that we could have talked about. We didn't even get to your men's groups or any of that type of stuff. So, there's so much more that we could talk about, and this was such an amazing conversation. I mean, it was almost 3 hours flowed by like nothing. I mean, it is 3 hours, and it flowed by.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. So,
All right, so I'm going to
beautiful.
stop the recording here. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. We will see you later.